All right, let's talk about soup. When we got married, it was still about a year for me to get your visa to bring you over here. So there was some time to wait. And while you were waiting to come over here and join me as my wife, you worried a little bit about cooking for an American, didn't you?
Yeah, I was worried about cooking for an American. And I tried to kind of see if I can learn a little bit, but you said I shouldn't worry, you would teach me. But boy, did you teach me.
Well, one of the things that I ate in those days was spaghetti made with pasta, but it was Dreamfield's pasta, which bragged that it had all kinds of non-digestible ingredients so that it wasn't supposed to do much to blood sugar. I did test myself. It was better than the regular. So for a while I did that until they did a lawsuit over that whole deal with Dreamfields, and they forced them to stop bragging about that their carbs were non-digestible. Okay. Anyway, I taught you how to make spaghetti with those noodles. Yeah. And when I first made it for you, you weren't very impressed, were you?
It was good, but not all that, like super duper chef soup. Spaghetti thing. But you did great.
Well, I had a very simple plan. You put some spaghetti sauce in a pan. You cook up some hamburger. You mix the hamburger with the spaghetti sauce. You do the noodles and pour it over it. Yeah. And you weren't satisfied. So I think one of the first times you tried to make spaghetti for me, you threw in almost every vegetable you could think of. I mean, it had broccoli and it had carrots. And I took one look at it and said, this is more like a salad than a spaghetti sauce.
Are you kidding me? It wasn't that huge.
Anyway, one thing I didn't have to teach you at all about was soup. Because Nigerians know how to make soup, don't they?
Yep, we know how to make soup, all right.
And I would say not just Nigerians, pretty much all Africans are big soup eaters. Yeah. So when I would bring you a bag of beans sometimes, I didn't have to say, well, sweetie, here's what you do with the beans. You boil the water and all that. You knew exactly what to do.
Yeah, I know what to do.
So that wasn't a problem, but the beans themselves could be a problem. Actually, soup itself has several problems to it for the diabetic, the person who wants to keep their glucose in range. Yeah. One of the problems is what they put in it. Oftentimes, people will put what in soup that's not so good?
Flour?
Yeah, they'll put flour to kind of thicken the soup. Right. Or they may throw in some rice. A lot of soup has rice in it. And oftentimes, it'll have noodles. Of course, for Americans, you don't get more American than chicken noodle soup. Okay. Every American kid, when I was a kid, would eat chicken noodle soup. Right. And there's nothing wrong with the chicken broth. There's nothing wrong with the meat, but the noodles. Yeah. Now, let's talk about beans, because that's what we're eating today, although it's a modified bean soup.
Yeah, actually, this is not exactly how we cook it in Africa. This is just me trying to, modify the whole thing to, suit you up.
Well, there you go. When you read Amazon reviews, and anytime I buy something on Amazon...
Review on my soup?
No, I'm not talking about your soup. I'm just talking about in general. Oh. If I want to buy something from Amazon, I'll read the reviews. Yeah. And one of the more common things people will say when they didn't exactly like a product is they'll say this, I really wanted to like this, but. And then they'll tell why they didn't really like it so much. Yeah. I could say that about beans. I've always wanted to like beans. Yeah. And they are superior to a lot of other options. For example, beans have more fiber than rice or bread. Beans have more protein than rice or bread. So they are really a much healthier choice. Sometimes in Africa, we feed the widows or we feed the orphans and we have our guys go out and buy them. Well, we can't go buy them a bunch of steaks. We don't have the money, and that's just not, they'd be shocked if we did that. But usually when you give somebody money to buy a bunch of food for a group of orphans or widows, they might head straight for the rice, and I try to encourage them, get beans rather than rice. Yeah. They're a superior choice. Yeah. But even as it is, they're not really the best, especially if your soup has got nothing but beans. Like they say in the court cases, beans, the whole beans, nothing but the beans. If that's your option, if that's how you do it, you're probably going to run into problems. I remember when I first started testing myself and realized I had blood sugar problems, you could buy bags of mixed beans. So they had 4, 5, 6 different types of beans in the bag, and you just cook them all up, and you've got mixed bean soup. And it had some stuff to make the soup with. So anyway, I had a nice bowl of mixed bean soup. And then I tested myself. Well, by that point, I had things pretty well under control, and I did not like to go over 140, and I went to 150. Well, that's not terrible, but it wasn't good, and that was like the last time I had mixed bean soup. But this is a little different. Tell us what kind of ingredients. Well, wait, before we get to that, let's go to our announcer. Did you know we have an announcer?
Well, I didn't know that. Now I do. So where's that?
We're reaching the big time. We've got our own announcer now. Let's go to our announcer and let him tell us about the difference between different beans you can buy at the grocery store.
Okay.
When you go looking for a bag of beans, you'll want the beans with the least carbs and the most fiber. Beans nutrition info is typically measured in 1/4 cup amounts, and they're very similar in terms of their total carbs. Here are the beans I found when I went to the store to buy the beans we would use for this video. The pinto beans had 23 grams of carbs and 7 grams of fiber. Lima beans, 22 grams of carbs and 7 grams of fiber. Northern beans, 22 grams of carbs and again 7 grams of fiber. Black-eyed peas, 21 grams of carbs and 4 grams of fiber. Black beans, 22 grams of carbs and 5 grams of fiber. Lentils, 22 grams of carbs and 4 grams of fiber. And the small red beans, 21 grams of carbs and 11 grams of fiber. Clearly, the best bang for your carbohydrate buck are the small red beans, which have 11 grams of fiber for 1/4 cup of beans, far more than any of the other beans. And I found this true in nearly every store, and no matter how many nutrition infos I've checked, small red beans are clearly the champ when it comes to net carbs, and that is why when Ben and I get a hunger for some bean soup, small red beans are the ones we always choose. Okay, so we find out that the beans we used, which are small red beans, have more fiber than practically any other beans you can buy, at least at that particular grocery store. Which means it's not going to affect your blood sugar so much. But we didn't just put beans in here, did we?
No, we didn't just put beans in here. We had some other ingredients inside the beans.
Tell us some of the other ingredients that we used.
Well, some of the ingredients that I used is like celery and a little carrot, and I had onion, and we have some mushroom in here, little, and then you just use oil, and there is also coconut oil. Right. I used also some chicken in here, and some diced tomatoes.
Okay, so this is not just pure bean soup by any means. So one of the keys to having bean soup and enjoying it and still keeping your glucose fairly decent is, don't just eat beans alone. Throw some other stuff in there with it. Secondly, you don't want a super thick soup. You want to have it a little bit on the liquidy side. This soup is actually pretty thick. The last time we had bean soup, it was thinner. And I tested myself, and I was shocked after about an hour and a half after eating. I had a 100. And I was like, whoa, that's fantastic. I have a feeling this will go a little higher because it's thicker. Plus, we're eating a little bit larger bowl.
There's some water, that kind of chicken broth that I made from myself, not from the grocery store. So
okay, so it's got some chicken broth in it. So this is a little bit less beans total. Normally, I wouldn't even eat this large of a bowl of soup with beans. I would probably have a little bit less, but you ladled it out, and I, like a good boy, just took what Mama provided. So we'll try it and we'll see. Like I said, I don't think I'll quite reach that 100. I'll probably be over that, but I don't think it'll be too terrible. Yeah. Now, here's one other issue with soup. That is soup by itself. Almost nobody would eat soup by itself. Okay. No African, no American, no anybody. If you serve soup, you better have something with it. Yeah. For Africans, for Nigerians, you call what you serve with the soup what? What's the name of what you serve with soup?
Normal soup we serve with fufu, but these beans, we don't call it soup in Africa, we call it beans. And we eat it with some other things that we can, lay our hands on, bread and all that, some other things. Yeah.
Well, and Americans do too. A lot of times they'll have soup and a big chunk of bread, or soup and they'll break in some crackers in it.
Right.
They'll have something beside the soup.
Yeah.
Because soup isn't all that filling. Now, I guess if you took a big monster bowl, you'd get full, but normally it doesn't quite fill you up, so you need something else. Now, bread is out for the diabetic, unless you got some kind of a keto bread. But
no bread.
I have a secret weapon. Are you ready to see the secret weapon?
I'm ready to see the secret weapon.
All right, here we go.
Oh, sweetie.
Da-da! How about that for a secret weapon?
That's a whole secret weapon coming out of that.
Well, you've heard the saying, they'll say something is the new something else. Like 50 is the new 40, or orange is the new black, or, they'll say something is the new. So for the diabetic, this baby, cheese, is the new bread.
Yeah.
Because bread will raise blood sugar like crazy. Cheese will not. There's almost no carbs to this.
Okay.
And you can it's almost a freebie. You can basically eat about as much as you want. You get tired of eating cheese, though. After a while, it's like, okay, well, that wasn't too bad, but I don't keep...
So a slice of cheese is a slice of bread.
Cheese is the new bread for the diabetic.
Okay.
And it will make a big difference. So we're going to enjoy a bean soup with celery, with some carrots, with some chicken broth, with some chicken itself in there. And am I missing something? Onions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So several different ingredients along with the beans. Cheese to help fill us up.
Right.
And then we'll test ourselves. Now, one thing about beans, they dissolve slowly. So you don't want to test quite the same as you would for a higher carb, faster exploding glycemic food.
Yeah.
So we'll do it an hour and a half after we finish. Normally it'd be an hour and 15 minutes. And we'll see where we go, and we'll be back to share with the folks the exciting news of what this beans and cheese has done to our blood sugar. Well, it's been an hour and a half since we finished eating. A lot of people wonder, is it when you start or when you finish? Well, it kind of depends on you, but for me, I always go by when I finish eating.
Okay.
Take that last bite.
Yeah.
So it's been about 90 minutes, a little over. Probably. And so we're going to test ourselves right here on camera.
Yay.
And I'm a little bit nervous, I will admit, because that bowl of beans was a little bigger and a little thicker with the beans than the previous one. But I have a feeling it's going to be all right. So let's go ahead and put this in the glucose meter. And go ahead and stick your finger and see what you get. You want to show the camera, hold it up to the camera so they can see it. It is a 115. You were at
80.
You had a great pre-meal score, and you did a lot better. I was 91, which wasn't terrible for me, but I would have been fun to have been in the 80s.
115 is not bad.
No, 115 is not bad, but it makes me a little nervous because if you are 115 and you usually do better than me, well, who knows? But we shall see.
It's even better that we ate a bigger bowl because some people who can eat a lot.
111.
No.
111, folks. So I ate a big bowl of beans, bigger than I usually would.
That.
You beat me on the pre-test. I beat you on the post-test.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
So I guess if you total it together, it would be a tie. But I handle it okay. So why would I even want to try beans when they're a little iffy? They're not terrible. They're not great. You're going to get more of a rise than if I'd eaten a couple of eggs, that's for sure. Why would I even want to try beans? The answer is simple. you like to have some variety. I mean, I could beat diabetes eating a hamburger patty and an egg every day, every morning, noon, and night. I could do it, but if I don't have to do it, why should I?
Yeah.
What say you?
Well, my advice is do whatever you can do or whatever you could to keep the blood sugar low instead of, eating all kinds of things that our body wants to have, like the bread, the biscuits, the, all the food that are in high carb. Tastes good, but sometimes, you think of what is going to do it to your body. Now you say no, somehow. Yeah. So we try as much as possible to eat what will help us to lower the blood sugar instead of rising it up, because our health is the most important thing we have.
That's right. And if someone came to me and said, Dennis, what kind of a diet are you on anyway? Is it Mediterranean? Is it vegan? Is it vegetarian? Is it keto? Is it carnivore? What is it?
None of it.
I would say my diet is a low spike diet. Or another way of putting it,
low carb diet.
My diet is a Mike pleasing diet. You say, who in the world is Mike? This little fella right here is Mike. I call him Mike the Meter. And when he gives me a 111 after a bean soup meal with some cheese, I say, okay, Mike, you didn't think that was too bad. He gave you a 115, not too bad. Yeah. So, low spike, Mike pleasing diet works for me.
Works for me.
The question that so many people have about us is, how in the world did you guys get to know each other? How did you get together? Well, the answer is found in Benedicta's new autobiography, When Destiny Calls. In fact, we do something in that autobiography that is almost never done. We each have a chapter sharing from our own perspective how we got together and how we first got to know each other. So she tells her side of it, I tell my side of it, and then it goes on with the rest of her autobiography. And the whole autobiography is exciting. It's a lot of drama and a lot of good stuff. But I think you'll find it interesting to know how it was that God brought us together. So there'll be a link in the description about how you can get this book on Amazon, either as an ebook or a paperback.